Good afternoon. Can you please? There's still people coming in, but I think it'll be good to get started. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We made a slight switch in the program, so I'm going first, and Beth is going to follow. It's a great pleasure to have all of you here to kick off our 10th anniversary event of the Tata-Cornell Institute. This 10th anniversary celebrations will go through the whole year. And today is the first event. And over the year, we hope to have a few distinguished lectures from distinguished people coming from who know about India and possibly coming from India. And then in May next year, we are planning to hold a conference on India's studies and on food and agriculture. No, sorry, it's not an India conference. It's more a global lessons learned around food, agriculture, and nutrition, the nexus. And we'll have a call for papers on that coming up soon. And at the end of that conference, we hope to also have a reunion of the alumni from this program, and then have a final party to celebrate 10 years. So that's the whole annual part of the celebration that we're thinking about. So it's 10 years in the sense that I count time from when I arrived at Ithaca and took over this program. So I arrived in Ithaca in May 2013. And at that time, we had one employee in this program. Oh, sorry, two employees in this program. Mary Catherine French, who was here, and Bhaskar Mitra, who's the associate director based in Mumbai. And so it's been a great pleasure to build the program from that very humble start. And for those of you who don't know, the Tata-Cornell Institute was set up with a very generous gift that was arranged through Mr. Ratan Tata, a gift of $25 million as an endowment. And Mr. Tata, as many of you know, is the former head, the chair of the Tata Group, and head of the Tata Trust, and an alum of Cornell from 1962. And he's actually, his degree from Cornell is in architecture, a BS in architecture. So when I first met with Mr. Tata, after I accepted to come to Cornell, I had the chance to meet him. And I asked him why he, being a big industrialist, building cars and steel, and all of that, and having a degree in architecture, why was he so keen on an institute that focuses on agriculture and nutrition? And his response was, well, I can get very good engineers in India, and I can get very good architects and others, and there's a lot happening. But India, despite its growth, is still suffering from massive malnutrition, the largest number of undernourished population, malnourished populations, and rural poor. And we don't seem to be able to get our heads around that. And so giving this problem to Cornell as a way to address it, and having some of the best minds come together to think about this, is one way in which we can try and address this problem. So that was a really good challenge for us to take on. And that's what we've been trying to work on over the last 10 years. And it's been a remarkable journey for us over the 10-year period. We've graduated around 18 students through the TCI program. The TCI program from the very beginning took PhD student research as a fundamental basis for our work, and to do intense field-based research that addresses real-world problems, but at the same time meets the very high standards of academic excellence of Cornell University. So from the very beginning, our emphasis was on getting students, bright students, get them out to India, get them to spend a year or 2 years working on problems in India, and then coming back and rigorous analysis of that, and submitting it for the thesis and publications after that. So over the last 10 years, we've graduated 14 PhDs and 4 master's students. We now have a pipeline of 17 PhD and master's students, well, a couple of masters and 15 PhD students in the pipeline going through this program. And our students right now are coming from 10 different departments across campus. We've got students in applied economics, obviously, but we've had students in animal science, food science, nutrition, development sociology, water science, water engineering, a whole host of disciplines across this campus. And we've been very proud to attract this multidisciplinary group. Plant sciences, of course, I see. I forgot, Rebecca was staring at me. Plant science and soil science has been a big part of what the students that we've been getting. And it's been great to build this multidisciplinary group, because you then have students trying to figure out from each other what the issues are and how to address them from their own perspective. So we've been very proud that our students in applied economics can answer some basic questions about mycotoxins, for example, because they've been in the same room with Rebecca Nelson's student working on aflatoxin. So that kind of interaction has been really important for us. Over the last 10 years, we've had a very good publication record and a growing publication record. I'm happy to report that as of today, we've got 41 peer-reviewed journal articles, and they've come out in some of the leading journals in the fields that our scholars and postdocs, research associates have been working in. Everything from PNAS and food policy and world development to the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition and Economics and Human Biology, soil science, etc. So the wide variety of journals that are the best in the fields that our scholars have been working in. And that's been a big validation of the principle that we were working with, that you take real life problems and really do rigorous research that meets the best academic standards. And over the years, we've also published 3 books. Our last book on transforming food systems for a rising India has been downloaded 150,000 times. So we've been really impressed with the impact it's having on the ground in the country. Of course, our core business is educating students and promoting student research, and the endowment funds that we have is almost exclusively used to ensure that happens. But in addition to that, we've raised funds so that we could do field-based research that expands beyond the PhD level research in India. And to do that and to attract postdoctoral fellows, research associates, etc., we've been raising additional funding. And over the last 10 years, we raised around $18 million through a variety of donors. Gates Foundation provided a large part of that. In addition to that, Walmart Foundation, Sequoia Foundation, and the USAID Feed the Future program, and most recently, Rockefeller Foundation grant that came in have been helping us expand the work we do and expand the influence that our work has in India. So much of the work that we initially started off was looking at this nexus between food, agriculture, and nutrition. And as we started the work, we were very focused on the malnutrition side of the story. But as we continued to work, we kind of expanded out the way we thought about food and much more in a food systems perspective and looking at various dimensions of food systems. And that's been, that allowed us to expand the scope of our research. So we've been looking at everything from technologies that one can use to extract iron from microalgae, which was one of a PhD student project from food science, to looking at aggregation of small farms into farmer-producer groups and how that can reduce transactions costs in food production, and looking at food loss and food waste issues. So a broad range of issues that have come together. And we've been expanding on that. And more recently, as we think ahead, over the next 5 years, we see the big challenge that we need to be addressing is adding environment and climate to our nexus. So to look most explicitly at climate impacts and environmental impacts of food systems. And how do you create food systems that are sustainable, but at the same time nutrition sensitive? And that's an area that we've been very focused on. Our Rockefeller Foundation grant and the Sequoia grant helps us move in that direction. We're also very excited to start thinking about the circular economy. And that's where I think Rebecca and her PhD student, Whitman Barrett, would be really helpful in moving in that direction. The work we did on connecting soil health to human health also has been a very innovative area of work, and we want to continue working in that area. And the next frontier that everyone talks about, which is digital agriculture. And how do we look at digital agriculture in terms of this nexus? So food, nutrition, and environment is something that we're also very excited about. I can keep talking, but I'm going to stop here. And it's my great pleasure to introduce the Senior Associate Dean, Beth Arnold. Beth has been the person that we've been directly communicating with regarding our program. And it's a great pleasure to meet you.
And it's actually my pleasure to be here to help kick off this the special 10th anniversary celebration and to follow Prabhu. I have to apologize in advance because we were working off the same script, the same set of notes for our talk. So I'm going to have to refer back to the fact that a lot of these things have already been said. But really, and I think maybe my main goal here really is to thank Prabhu for the great job that he's done here these last 10 years as the inaugural director of Tata. So thank you for inviting me. Thank you for the honor to speak. I know Dean Holton really wanted to be here. He was called off to New York City, so he got me instead. And it has been really a pleasure to be that interface between the Dean's office and Dyson and to work with Prabhu and his role in the college. So these last 10 years, TCI has funded impactful research, fostered interdisciplinary work, has facilitated translation to impact that's really impressive, and supported the development of talented scholars. And that was Prabhu's emphasis here, that students. The team here has always strived to keep a focus on the common goal of taking a food systems approach to reduce poverty and improve nutrition and livelihoods abroad, with a specific focus on India. We are incredibly grateful to the Tata Group, through its Education and Development Trust established this endowment that Prabhu referred to enable this institute to be here on campus. We're also very grateful to Mr. Ratan Tata, also mentioned, former chairman of India's Tata Group and a Cornell alumni. We know that his vision really for the institute was a real driving force to what this institute has become. And we are also really grateful to Professor Prabhu Pengali as the founding director and an inspirational leader really throughout these 10 years of impact. Prabhu has been a thoughtful and careful steward of the resources provided by the endowment, and as well as a generous mentor to students and the young scholars involved in the program. And so for that, Prabhu, we really thank you very much. TCI has achieved numerous successes as measured by the typical metrics. Prabhu mentioned the dozens of publications in peer-reviewed journals, books, news briefs, the conferment of advanced degrees for students that we're really proud of, and the many fields that he also mentioned, which I won't reiterate here. But many of them are CALS fields, I'll point that out. And so it really makes it is a really comfortable home for this institute to sit in CALS and global development and the Dyson School. So because the work that you do is so integral to what we do as a college. So Prabhu also mentioned that the team has expanded beyond the endowment funds to seek additional funding outside of Cornell. And really one of the programs that's really impressive is the program entitled Technical Assistance and Research for Indian Nutrition and Agriculture, or the acronym TARINA. And fortunately for me, Prabhu didn't talk about this, so I can talk to you a little bit about it. It was funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. TARINA has focused on building a consortium of policy-focused academics with impact-focused NGOs, and that's enabled design and implementation of data-driven solutions to address complex problems of malnutrition in India. TARINA impressively has served more than 15,000 households with interventions designed to improve nutrition through strategies such as crop diversification and kitchen gardens. Specific strategies have been broadly adopted by local governments as a result. And for example, the kitchen garden model is now used by over 1,600 tribal residential schools in the state of Odisha. Another amazing example of global outreach that epitomizes our land grant to the world aspiration as a college and university. In the last few years, it has been really exciting to see TCI expand the research profile to include not only nutrition-sensitive agriculture, but to focus, as Prabhu mentioned, on climate smart farming, climate agriculture, because we know that agriculture is not only impacted by climate change, but also contributes to it. So it's really important that we move in that direction. We're really excited to see the impact of new projects, such as the Zero Hunger, Zero Carbon Food Systems project, I think some is talking about today, and also the Farm Waste to Furniture program. That sounds very exciting. And we're excited that TCI has also partnered seamlessly with other CALS-based programs, such as the USAID funded Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Crop Improvement. We look forward to continuing to partner with TCI as we launch university efforts to support climate solutions, such as the 2030 project, which we hope you all heard about, which is underway in partnership with Cornell Atkinson, and our soon to be launched Cornell CALS Moonshot Hiring Initiative in two areas that will be relevant to TCI: accelerating holistic climate solutions and redesigning 21st century agri-food systems. And so those will be exciting faculty hiring initiatives that we hope that this team will be involved in. So as I bring my remarks to a close, happy anniversary to you all. We have so much to be, you have so much to be proud of. including the growth from 2 staff members plus Prabhu to now more than 20 people working in Ithaca in India. Graduate students having exemplary Cornell experiences with emphasis on field work and academic rigor. We're just proud that we're a part of this grand experiment that was launched by the TCI group, the Tata group. So I hope you enjoy the programming that Prabhu is planning for the year, and I hope that I get to come and participate, see some of the talks as you move forward. But thank you for listening, and I hope you all the continued success for the coming 10 years. And thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Beth. The next group of presentations are meant to be brief, high-level presentations. So sort of like speed dating, right? 3 slides was the limit. And following that, I think we are going to have a slide and a presentation from our associate director, who is in Mumbai. So next up is going to be one of our students in her final year, Venetia Sharma, who is going to reflect on her fieldwork experience.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I am very excited to share with you my speed dating profile. So I joined TCI a little over 5 years ago, back when I was still completing my master's in the public administration department. And gradually I realized that my interests lay in a field that was a little bit newer and emerging in the broader literature of agriculture. I was interested in digital agriculture, which meant, and diving even deeper, I really wanted to know, with the increasing internet access in India and increasing prevalence of messaging apps, even in the most rural areas of the country, I wanted to understand how farmers are using smartphones to inform their agricultural decisions. And for this, I needed a very new and very different kind of data. So after months of exploratory fieldwork and piloting and years of networking with various stakeholders and an entire pandemic, I was finally able to complete this field experiment, which spanned 108 villages in rural South India. And we were based in this small town called Madanapalli, which is also the biggest tomato market in all of Asia. And while I was in the field, I started journaling regularly because I wanted to, be able to come back. And while I was working from my office here down the corridor, I wanted to be able to reflect back on the main driving force behind this study. And for me, that was unequal access in information in rural communities, especially in the agriculture context, in a time when costs of information exchange are almost negligible. Right, and I thought this had a lot of really strong policy implications. So I wanted to collect my own data for this experiment, which I think primary data is extremely important in understanding contextual differences and patterns. And also it's an easy way to extract treatment effects from possible policy interventions given a target population. But it comes with its own set of challenges. And for me, the first one was being in such a different environment, which kind of felt like a home away from home because I am Indian, but this research was based in a small town in a place where I wasn't familiar with the language or the food, but somehow I was able to survive the year and even learn the basics of this new local language, Telugu, and new cuisine. The other thing is getting this data from farmers, right? And for high quality survey data, it meant that we had to reach these farmers before they left for their fields, which translated into waking up at 6 a.m. on most days, some days even before 6 a.m. depending on the weather, debriefing my entire team for that specific day's goals and the destinations we were to cover out of the 108 villages. Also, as someone who's working on internet in rural communities, I wanted to digitize the entire data collection process. So that meant buying new equipment, new tablets to collect this data, and also using the most updated versions of online survey software. But a lot of my team was not familiar with this new technology. And so right after reaching the destination, I was able to lead a week-long intensive training that helped everyone familiarize with the new equipment and the new survey software. And also we were able to test out the pilot questionnaire earlier versions with some of the pilot farmers. Also to add, to my knowledge, this was the first student-led experiment, not just within TCI, but within the entire DICE department that was conducted right after the pandemic was declared. And because of that, I felt responsible not only for the health of my enumerating team, but also the entire population of these 108 villages, right? Because we were the ones commuting from the big tomato market to these very remote villages that may have otherwise not even had exposure to COVID. And so a big part of the enumerator training was focused on strict COVID protocol during the survey, which meant social distancing, delaying or even canceling the interviews, even if there were slightest symptoms of COVID in a household or in a village. And also rigorous use of hand sanitizer and 95 masks, of course. Also, typically a field experiment just to add to that, luckily, because of all of the precautions we took and due to the timing of the survey being right after the unfortunate second wave of COVID in India and the experiment coinciding with the vaccination rollout, there were no COVID spreads during the course of the study in this particular region. And so an experiment of this scale typically requires at least one principal investigator and a research assistant and an accountant and an HR manager. But when you're a graduate student conducting an experiment, you're kind of running the whole show yourself. So I found myself juggling between balancing receipts and hiring or firing enumerators and creating or supervising surveys while at the same time working on my own research and cleaning and compiling and merging and analyzing the data. So I kind of felt like a project manager running my own business. Thankfully, I received immense support from TCI. And also I got really, really lucky with the team I had back in the Nepali of 10 enumerators, 2 supervisors, and 1 project coordinator. So I just want to conclude by saying that, and I know some of you have already heard me say this before, but the last few months were really the most fulfilling of my career as a graduate student. And for this, I think it's because I was able to try my best to understand questions that are really important in the developing world. And for this, I'll always be thankful to TCI and to my team back in Nepali for making it all happen. And I'm happy to talk more about my research and my time back there, but I think in the interest of time, I'll pass the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Benisha, and you kept it to 6 minutes and 50 seconds. All right, our next presenter is Anil Natravalli. He is the Jean and Douglas McLean Professor in Fiber Science and Apparel Design in Human Ecology. And he's going to talk about his green composite project that TCI has been helping him with.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much again. Let me go to the next slide, right? How do I get to the next slide?
Oh, touch screen.
This
Over
screen.
here,
Oh,
just
okay.
hit the arrow right here.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Great.
All right. Before I go to my speech, I want to thank Prabhu Pingali for at least having some confidence in me that I could probably do something. I mean, he mentioned about several different topics and the diverse projects he has been supporting. He didn't mention one, which I'm going to be speaking about, fiber science. When we process the agriculture or food, we create also a lot of waste. And if you go, for example, in October or early November to Punjab or Haryana, you will see the scenes that, second down the state, there are so many fires going on. So what's happening there? The land is fertile, the people are very hardworking, and there is no problem with the water, plenty of water because of the dams, deep dams. So they take 3 crops. What that does is that there is no time in between 2 crops. So in October, middle of October, they harvest rice. And in a week or so, they want to plant the next one, right? At the same, so if you harvest rice, the actual grain amount is about 5 to 7% of the entire plant. 95% is rice stubble or rice straw. So the question is, what do you do with that rice stubble? What they do, and I talked to one of the farmers, he said, you tell me, if I have to hire people and carry all that to someplace, I need a place to put it, I need a person, I need a vehicle to take it there, right? And I have nothing to there. The best way, or rather the cheapest way for me, is to collect at different places, drive for 3 days and light the fire. It costs me 2 rupees instead of 5,000 rupees that I will spend and get nothing in return. So that's what happens there. So I talked to Professor Bengali, say, hey, I work with fiber science. I can make composite materials that could be useful for interior furniture, cabinetry, tables, stools, chairs, and all these things. Finally, he said, okay, let's try, give it a try. So what we do now is, and my research is in composite materials. For many years, I did work in graphite fiber and epoxy composite, but then I started to think about, hey, what happens to these composites at the end of their life? Everything has a life, right? These are completely non-biodegradable and they end up in landfills, right? Instead, for furniture where we don't really need those stiff and advanced composites, we can use the rice straw and other fibers together and make composites that we could make tables or chairs or cabinets and all these things. So we've been successful actually. Our process is quite simple. We take resin. We actually have different types of resins that are based on soy protein and other non-edible proteins as well as starches. So it's water-based process. We just add the cross linkers, which are also non-toxic. That is our resin. We impregnate the resin into the fiber form, woven fabrics or knitted fabrics or non-woven mats, and then we hot press them into whatever shape we want. If you want. So I have a few examples here. I believe in examples. And these are now sort of laminated. I'll pass this along. You can see the rice straw on one side and the jute fabric on the other side. So it's a combination of rice straw, which is basically acts like a filler, and the jute fabric, which is giving the strength, and the resin, which bonds everything together to form this material, can be laminated. It acts like wood, it performs like wood, you can nail it, you can screw it, laminate it, or anything you want to do. Just pass it along, right? Now, lately, our latest version is that we can now process a board that is corrugated in just one shot. Really, in real life, you have to make this top sheet, the bottom sheet, and the corrugated, and then join them together. And now we have done this in one shot. And what this does is not only reduce the cost of making it, but also it reduces the weight. And we can change the corrugation and all these things depending upon the application or what the furniture makers want. So we can do that. So I'm going to stop here. That's basically my presentation. If you have any questions, you can ask me later on. Okay. Thank you very much.
you so much, Anil. Our next presenter is Sage Brasso-Monroe. She's a research support specialist at TCI. Joined us about 1.5 years ago, I think just as she was finishing up a degree here at Cornell. And she's going to talk to you about the TCI Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Crop Improvement Project, which she works exclusively on. Oh, there you go.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here and talk to you all about the USAID funded project known as the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Crop Improvement, or SEE. I'm going to talk a little bit about the role of TCI in measuring institutional capacity in this ILC project. So just to give a little bit of background, the Feed the Future labs are US-led labs that really focus on reducing malnutrition, hunger, and poverty globally. And there's 20 labs across the United States. And the ILC project was started in Cornell in 2019. So the mission of ILC is to equip the country's scientists and stakeholders with the intellectual and operational resources to connect breeding programs, efforts with market demands, and to reduce malnutrition and hunger worldwide. So ILC is working to empower national agriculture research systems to set and achieve goals with the aim of developing genetically improved crop varieties to reduce risks from economic, environmental, and climatic shocks for resource-poor populations. So ILC is working with national breeding programs in East, West, and Southern Africa, as well as Central America and the Caribbean. So through the establishment of regional hubs and connecting with US universities, regional and global collaboration is being established and promoted to share resources and expertise. ILC aims to innovate tools, technologies, and methodologies that are enhancing specific traits, including yield, nutrition, and crop resilience, with the goal of addressing food and nutritional challenges in the particular partner countries that these national breeding programs work in. And within these goals, ILC is really prioritizing resilience and risk management, especially in the context of climate changes, gender equality, equity, and participation, youth inclusivity, and nutrition. So within the ILC project, TCI is tasked with measuring the changes in institutional capacity within the national breeding programs in our partner countries as a result of the ILC project interventions. So while there's this global network of researchers that are making scientific discoveries in plant breeding, we also have to confront the capacity of the programs that enable the development of these improved crop varieties. Measuring and assessing institutional capacity is really critical in understanding the success of development programs. So the measurement is helping with really 3 key aspects of assessing development programs. And first, it defines a starting point. And so this is the baseline capacity that allows us to measure the institution's ability to perform, sustain that performance over time, and adapt to changes and shocks. Secondly, we're able to uncover hurdles. And by doing that, we can design these appropriate programmatic responses. And lastly, it measures the changes in institutional capacity to measure progress throughout time and to measure the change based on interventions. And that allows us to track the ability of the institution to fill its mandate, and it provides insights into where investments can be placed in the future for continuing improvement. So within a program, there's drivers of capacity, such as the resource endowments, the human capital, and technical expertise. And then these all lead to an output, and that output is a response to interventions. And so in the case of the ILC project, that's the ability to identify, innovate, and implement the sustained crop improvement research, which is then leading to the outcome. And the outcome is the institution's ability to really sustain this performance over time and to manage and adapt to changes. So for ILC, this is the ability to achieve genetic gains and release and the adoption by farmers of these improved crop varieties. And then all of that is leading to the final impact and the mandate of the institution, which is for ILSI and crop improvement programs, the ability to meet the country's future and current food and nutritional security challenges. So our first step in understanding capacity and measuring and assessing capacity in the public sector national programs is we had to define capacity. And we scoured the literature and we were trying to assess the research landscape. And we found that there was no real cohesive definition of what institutional capacity and crop improvement programs is. But we found these compartmentalized kind of definitions of components of capacity, and we were able to compile that together and define institutional capacity of these national breeding programs as the ability to deliver genetic gain and produce relevant crop varieties that respond to target populations, environments, and market demands. And then next, what we did was we established this conceptual and empirical model of institutional capacity. And this allowed us to measure baseline capacity, which is really essential in defining a starting point in which that we can track changes from this benchmark to measure the progress of the ILSI interventions on institutional performance. So TCI developed this tool that we could measure the institutional context, and that which is driving the capability of breeding programs to achieve their desired outputs. And at the end of the project, we will implement this very same survey to do an end line, and we can track the success of the ILSI project based on the changes of institutional capacity and measure the progress over time in the breeding programs. I hope you enjoyed my speed profile here, and happy to pass it on.
Thank you, Sage. All right. A lot of slides here that I don't think are arrows. Back, sorry. There we go. Sorry about the arrow. Next up is TCI faculty fellow Harold Vaness, and he is going to talk about his Healthy Soil, Healthy Food project work.
Thank you. I know you wanted me to do a quick presentation, but not that quick. So healthy soils, healthy people. First of all, I want to say it's been a pleasure to be part of TCI. Actually, even preceding TCI when it was called the awkward name Taco-An, prior to Prabhu's arrival, and people for some reason thought it had to do with Mexican food. So one of the great decisions that Prabhu made right away was to rename it much better. I just really enjoyed being part of the team. It's just a great bunch of people, good professionals. So I had the pleasure of working with 3 graduate students, Phil, Fatma, and Kavya, and 1 postdoc, Sonam, and then I put Andy's name on there too, because since he arrived, we've been collaborating a lot as well. And we had the pleasure of working with some NGOs, some universities and research institutions that helped us basically reach farmers, or they gave us access to their long-term experiments, or they allowed us to establish a soil health lab, the first soil health lab in India. So the Green Revolution, of course, has been very impactful in India, maybe of almost any country in the world, maybe the most, prevented a lot of hunger. But the Green Revolution involves a lot of improvement in crop genetics, in yield potential, and also heavily introduction and reliance on synthetic inputs, synthetic fertilizers, especially. And so, and that has been great, but now we sort of have reached a point where the crop genetics, the potential of the crop genetics cannot be achieved because there's other factors that are limiting. And the barrel on the top there, for anybody who has taken a degree in or a course in agronomy knows that relates to the chemicals that may be a yield limiting factor. So for example, if potassium is your yield limiting nutrient, then if you apply potassium fertilizer, then you can boost your yields. And that's generally holds true. But now we've kind of moved away from that and said, like, you know, it's not only chemicals that are limiting factors. So if you just use synthetic fertilizers, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can reach that yield potential, because there's now more concerns about biological and physical limitations of the soil, like compaction or aggregation and, you know, organisms that can thrive in the soil. So we used our sort of Cornell soil health framework, applied it to the Indian environment. And so one component of that is to have indicators that measure physical, biological, and chemical processes in the soil. Now, the chemical, of course, is sort of what's done traditionally. The biological and physical is what's new. So over the years, I ended up going to a number of places. I started out in eastern Maharashtra, in Akola and Bhopal, where the National Soil Science and Agriculture Engineering Institutes are. Recently went with Prabhu to Hyderabad, to ICRISAT, and made an interesting visit to an organic garment operation, in Tamil Nadu. But most of our work we did in Jharkhand and Bihar, and we set up a soil health laboratory in Bihar and Pusak. So we did a lot of education, a lot of presentations. We did workshops in person, we did it virtually. And I think that was really critical in terms of getting people to think about soil health, about soil health more holistically. Now, one of the unfortunate developments was that the government of India defined soil health in terms of the chemistry of the soil, just about the time when we started, and they came out with the soil health cards, and we say, no, that's not a soil health card. That's just a traditional soil test. So we built a lab infrastructure, and we learned a lot. So one of them is that soil health in India, in some places, is really low. That by sort of global standards, you know, low in organic matter, highly compacted soils. You can look on the bottom there. Yield is often limited by agronomic management. For example, planting dates and all that. Actually, Andy did a lot of work on that, as well as soil health. And we were able to relate soil health to yield. You can see that on the graphs. What turns out to be really critical is the cycling of biomass. I'm sure Rebecca's going to talk about that. In a way, it's interesting to hear Neil talk, because there are parts of the country where there's a lot of residue and there's too much, and there's other parts of the country, like in Bihar, where there's not sufficient cycling of biomass, because a lot of the crop residues are being fed to animals, mostly cattle, and that creates its own problems, because it's a low quality feed, and that increases methane emissions. And then what comes out the back end as manure then often is used as fuel for cooking. So very little of it goes back. And so when you look at that lower left picture, you see these soils that are very low in organic matter, very compacted. And so that's really a problem, right? And then tillage is also a factor. So there's a lot of intensive tillage, not enough cycling of biomass. And you basically have a situation where the yields are depressed by easily 2/3 or maybe even more, okay? So that yield is not achieved. That means that the calories are not achieved. And then also Fatma, one of the PhD students, then looked at the nexus between soil health, the crop quality, and human health, right? So because we're not only looking at calories, we also want proteins, amino acids, and minerals that are very important. And so that was a real challenge. We did that in a tribal region in Jharkhand, where most people actually rely on a local food supply. And that's what you have to do, because most of us eat foods from all over. We might eat something from New Zealand or South Africa or Ecuador or maybe even locally from New York. But in these tribal areas, people mostly eat the local food stuff. And so we found some patterns in terms of, you know, soil health and human health, but it's very difficult. That's very difficult to establish those kind of relationships. So Fatma did a very admirable job in getting that started. And Kavya did a very admirable job in terms of setting up a soil health laboratory. And we learned a tremendous amount about soil health, especially from Bihar, and hopefully we can extend that. So that's my spiel. Thanks very much, Brendan. Yeah.
Thank you, Harold. Next up, continuing to represent the School of Integrative Plant Sciences is faculty fellow Rebecca Nelson, and she's going to talk to us about ecological sanitation. I think that's.
So good afternoon and hats off to you, TCI, on the occasion of your 10th birthday or anniversary. And hats off also especially to my old friend Prabhu Pingali. So this last 10 years is merely one of the 4 decades I've been admiring Prabhu's work. And I've been particularly admiring this last 10 years, of course. So I do want to sort of brag about this a little bit because I was on the committee that hired Prabhu, so I'm particularly pleased at how his come out gets enumerated. But I also have to acknowledge that 10 years before that, he was instrumental in bringing me to Cornell in a different capacity. So having to do with the McKnight Foundation, for which I was hired one time, and he was on the committee that did that. So I bring this up partly to brag, but partly also to get to the theme of what comes around goes around, because my topic today is the circular economy, about things coming around and going around. I don't know how many people are tracking the idea of the circular economy, but the idea is that to design out waste, keep materials in circulation, and regenerate nature. And so the specific aspect of circular economy that I'm talking about here with this ecological sanitation idea is a circular bionutrient economy, where we're talking about connecting sanitation and agriculture to address the issues that Harold brought up about maintaining soil health and the soil organic matter in particular. So the circular bionutrient economy is an idea that is pressing to me and has sort of caused me to kind of take this topic on because it can address the food crisis and now currently the fertilizer crisis. It can help us address thereby the soil health crisis, but also the water and sanitation crisis. These are all big crises, not only for India, but for everybody these days. And so if we're thinking about circular bionutrient economy, we're talking about turning upon their heads 2 of the greatest achievements of humanity over my lifetime and beyond. So when the public health people were asked what's the greatest hit of public health, it's overwhelmingly voted that modern sanitation is the biggest public health contribution ever. And if you think about what is the biggest contribution of agricultural research and development, the Green Revolution, and particularly probably much as I'm in the plant breeding department, probably modern fertilizers are the biggest achievement and contribution to feeding all 8 billion of us, how many there are. But so the idea of bringing sanitation and agriculture together is quite radical because it does require us sort of to abandon modern sewage and modern synthetic fertilizer in favor of circular economy. And Wendell Berry once put it that modern agriculture takes an elegant solution and breaks it into 2 matching problems. And I think it really is time to bring those matching solutions back together into that elegant solution of circular bionutrient economy. So my slides very quickly. First, to show, you can see how, I don't know, it doesn't actually come across nearly as well as projection as it does when you look on at the paper. But India, on the actual paper, India and China blast out as being the highest users of fertilizer and the highest contributors to greenhouse gases. We're doing that because the use of modern nitrogen fertilizer is about 10% of the greenhouse gas contribution of agriculture. And with the war and climate change and one thing and another, the global price of fertilizers has been escalating radically recently. And it's really impossible to imagine that the subsidies can continue, and therefore they are not. And it's difficult for people. So suddenly, maybe solutions that others had dreamed for a long time, sort of these agroecological solutions are getting more attention. Zero budget natural farming. And I think the farmers are suspicious that this is just an approach to, to let the government off of its subsidies. But so one way or another, it really is a moment where alternatives to sort of straight up green revolution technologies are being heard. It's not going to be easy. There's plenty of resistance to the idea of returning nutrients from sanitation to agriculture, but we do see some progress towards ecological sanitation. It's in the global literature quite a bit these days in the public press. And I'm thinking back on my own experience with the TCI. The first student that I worked with was Anthony Wendt. How many people know Anthony? So yeah, so he was, I think, thanks to the exposure that he was able to get thanks to TCI, he's now got an important role leading the pro-poor work of GAIN, a global initiative, alliance for international nutrition, improvement in nutrition, something, big operation in DC. And I don't think he would have gotten that coming straight out of a plant science sort of degree. But so we were working together on managing mycotoxins, and I was really proud of us for having a holistic approach toward mycotoxin management. The work that he did on post-harvest management and using a variety of pre- and post-harvest approaches to reducing mycotoxins. But I realized it was still a value chain approach. And I realized unless we can make it a value, not a chain, a linear chain, but a cycle, we really couldn't do our best with this approach. So it's really, we use human urine to test for mycotoxins, and it just occurred to me that if we can make the cycle complete, that we would be building soil health with the use of straight tap and diversify agriculture, bring in diversified crop management for what Andy and Harold are bringing to the program. I think then we can probably, contribute to this long-term sustainability. So now I'm very pleased to be working with Whitman, who's exploring the issues there. It's obviously difficult. He's taking a look at some of the psychosocial issues. We have to do it right, and he's very cautious about the human aspect of that. So just to wrap up, saying that the work that Whitman is contributing to TCI and that we're doing is part of a larger effort where we're working here, also in Ithaca and also in Africa. So I really appreciate the work that this 10-year celebration will bring to highlight about the possible role of circular economy and circular bionutrient economy globally will highlight this year. And so one of the particular technologies that we're working on is the idea of turning the human waste, solid waste into biochar, and capturing the nutrients from urine onto that and making a safe fertilizer product that not only builds nutrients, but also carbon into the soil. So the supervisory group for Whitman includes Johannes Lehmann. And we're thinking back when Johannes and I and yourself, Harold, were supervising another student back in the day who was working in Africa. That was really a founding idea for me too. So again, hats off to TCI. Congratulations on being such a wonderful, exciting program. And I look forward to celebrating this year and enjoying the next decade of TCI success.
Thank you, Rebecca. And our last presenter is Dr. Andrew McDonald, also from the School of Integrative Plant Sciences. And he's going to talk about landscape diversity and sustainability transitions. Andy?
Hard acts to follow. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to be here. I need to change the slides. Let's see. Yeah, so when I gave this title to Brenda, I thought I could do this in 7 slides. And Brenda told me yesterday, there's no way I'm allowed to. So forgive me with the brevity of my remarks. A couple of acknowledgements before I start. I started taking Harold's cue of listing all my collaborators. And this is a partial list, and I'm appalled at all the people that I've already missed. And I haven't named any organizations. My success in this role and the role that I had before I came to Cornell in 2019 is really predicated on the excellent scientists, national scientists, global scientists that I've been able to collaborate with. So a deep vote of thanks to those folks and all the others that I have. The program that we have here at Cornell is loosely called Systems Agronomy Program for Global Development, where we think about processing people impact, so accountability to change processes. On our better days, people say, well, what is agronomy? One people say rates and dates. It's the classic definition of agronomy, rates and dates. I'd like to think that we do more than that. We're really about integrative science crop production. It goes from basic biology through to social sciences. It's interdisciplinary by nature, which in my mind fits very well within the TCI mission, towards practical decision-making and focusing on processes and emergent properties of systems. Where we work, and this goes back to when I was actually based in South Asia, focuses on the eastern Ganges Plain. So in Bihar, with Harold and others, Hunger Zero Carbon is located there as well, but extending into adjacent states as well. And why is this area important? Well, it's a global food security, poverty hotspot. There's more poor people in this area that are ag-dependent than any other region of the world. It's also complicated. So when I think about solution spaces for these ecologies, it's not just a function of the technology, it's a function of the genetics, the environment, the management overlay, and the social system support change. So in order to get things right, we have to recognize that diversity rules in these kinds of places, and that solution spaces are contingent on lots of different things. So I'm going to give you two short examples, and in recognition that your refreshments are waiting, try to be compact in my remarks. When I started working in these areas in 2010, we were still doing a whole bunch of controlled on-farm trials. So like mini research stations on farm. And then we complement that at the university. Right? So exerting a lot of control on the environment and getting very precise answers. And of course, there's a lot of merit. There's a lot of intellectual clarity that comes with that in a very narrow domain. Ag things, right? We know if you do one thing, it leads to another. But what that does is it averages out all the diversity in these environments. And if you buy what I said earlier, that's problematic. These are complicated systems. So we pivoted very strongly in 2016 to do more diagnostic research, more surveys with national partners, with something we call the Landscape Diagnostic Tool, which gave us snapshots of production practices and yield outcomes. We coupled that with environmental characterization data on soils, weather factors, and to create these rich data sets that sort of characterized all the diversity that we're seeing at the landscape scale. And then in turn, why is that important? Because then we can do experiments with machine learning and other more modern analytical techniques to say, hey, if you look at individual farm field, all these different factors of humans work, we can ask the host of what ifs. The example that I'm giving here is around the issue of nitrogen fertilizer. Why is this important? Rebecca had a slide, Carol talked about this as well. The subsidy bill for nitrogen last year in India was over $22 billion. It's the biggest line item in the budget. Well, probably you can correct me on that. But it's a huge policy imperative for the government to reduce fertilizer. But what they've gone to is to say, well, we're assuming because fertilizer is cheap and everyone is going to or should reduce their nitrogen. But by having rich data stacks and modern analytical methods, we can parse the landscape and look at things in a more nuanced way and look at opportunities. Without getting into too many details here, this is some of those results from, in this case, this is wheat. We're looking at where fertilizer is being over-applied. And you can see those red points on the map are all fields or areas where farmers are over-applying nitrogen. But there's a geographic pattern, right? It's not everybody. Not everybody needs to reduce. There's some people that are wildly overusing, and we know where those folks are. So targeting. This is precision management for smallholders powered by bigger data and modern analytics. The other thing that emerged here is, well, it's maybe not the farmers that we think that are really the source of the problem. We've done some work, something that I've done in parallel with Sonam, it's forthcoming, to look at the association between achieved yield levels at farm level and estimates of nitrous oxide emissions. And what you can see here is that the biggest problem is not these folks out at the end pushing the yield envelope. It's the lower yielding farmers that are using too much fertilizer. They have low yield potential in the system and they're over-applying, right? So some of the development orthodoxies about where the problem resides don't actually show up in the data. And so the data gives us a better idea of where to go within those ecologies, who the target. So the next thing I want to talk about very quickly, I know Brenda, you're keeping time, is that's a first generation problem, first generation green revolution problem that we can tackle through modern analytics. There are other things going on in the Eastern GP. This relates to Anil's presentation as well, this issue of agricultural burning and the transition from having crop residues as a product that can sustain soil health and otherwise contribute to livelihoods through livestock, to a waste product. This is work that Emily Urban, registered with us, PhD with us, is leading. We've done a lot of work of time series analysis in these environments to determine how the practice of burning is changing with time, more or less double in the last 10 years. Only 10% of farmers are doing it, but the trends aren't good. And if you spin this out into the mid-century, the regional air quality problems that are going to be created by this are massive, in addition to what it does to depleting soil health. So the take home that I wanted to emphasize here is that there are lots of linked processes or contributing factors that actually make farmers think that residue is a waste rather than something of value to do something else with on the farm. And that includes a host of different factors that include mechanization, labor availability, agronomy around all this, and of course the linkages with livestock. So how we understand this transition from value product to waste product is super important. And the last thing I'll say, hey, this is a vote for TCI, is that TCI is a perfect platform. And Emily's benefited from being part of the TCI research group, of having this interdisciplinary perspective that grapples with this complexity of look for levers, policy options that can change this basic equation so we don't end up looking like this. So a big thanks to TCI for doing. TCI is actually one of the reasons that I came back to Cornell, because it's a very unique program in terms of its interdisciplinary focus anchored in a specific geography. So kudos to TCI, great approach, great people. Thanks very much.
Great job, Andy. I know that was tough. So next we have a message from our associate director who's in Mumbai, Bhaskar Mitra. And hopefully.
Hello everyone, my name is Bhaskar Mitra and I am based at Mumbai, India. As we begin the 10th anniversary celebrations of the Tata-Cornell Institute, my mind flies back to the year 2012 when we were a fledgling young organization just starting off. In fact, the first few trips Prabhu made to India, he and I traveled across the length and breadth of the country by road, stopping at various locations, many of which were impromptu halts, to talk to villagers and understand issues straight from them. The last 10 years has been a rocking roller coaster ride, traveling to various parts of India, trying to understand the problem of food, agriculture, nutrition bottom up, and designing what TCI should be engaging in. During this period, we had a large number of scholars carry out their PhD fieldwork in India, interns working on grassroots problems in our own field sites and that of our partner organizations, often along with interns from other Indian academic institutions. During the last decade, we designed and led a flagship program called Tarina in UP, Bihar, and Orissa, worked on projects on farmer-producer organizations, agricultural technology, hunger, and climate linkages, etc. Right now, as I record this, colleagues from our Delhi office and Ithaca are in a fieldwork in Bihar's villages to understand the adoption of agriculture-led climate mitigation strategies there. To summarize the journey, all I can say is that it has been an incredible decade that just went by. While we may have been around for about 10 years now, we are still a very young organization in both letter and spirit. I look forward to a very exciting future to see TCI take off from where we are today, leave its imprint on core issues we focused on, and leave behind an incredible legacy of some great work. Wishing everyone at Ithaca a great time ahead and happy celebrations. Thank you, everyone.
So to close, I think Prabhu has some closing remarks. I thought, maybe not.
But I just want to make a couple of points. One is the faculty fellows of TCI have been a really important core for us. Without the strong work of the faculty fellows and bringing students with them and spending time mentoring students in this field, we wouldn't be having this big multidisciplinary group. And I think that's something we definitely have to recognize. Big thank you to the faculty fellows who are here and some of the faculty fellows who could not make it here today. Second, Bhaskar Mitra and the team in Delhi have been a tremendous support system for us. Not just in terms of helping us implement the work on the ground, but every time there's a student on the ground, I know Bhaskar Mitra spends sleepless nights worrying about them when they're out in the field and when they're in these very remote villages doing field work. One of the big issues is safety first. And so we've been trying to make sure that everything goes according to plan, everything is safe and very productive. And without having Bhaskar on the ground in India, we would not be able to manage this operation at all. And I think that's something that we want to recognize and be really thankful for. And our team back here in Ithaca. Matthew Abraham, our assistant director, is actually in India right now. They've been finishing up this field work on zero hunger, zero carbon Bihar, and then he doesn't have a visa to come back to the US, so he's been figuring out how to get back in, and hopefully today he got that sorted out. So we look forward to having him back. He's been enormously helpful in helping build the team up and this interface between the work of our student scholars and the work on the ground, and trying to create ways in which our scholars can benefit from some of the other grant activities that we're doing on the ground. And our staff, Brenda, Harry, and Dan, have been enormously helpful in building up this work and the communications around it. I do want to recognize Mary Catherine French, who was the very first person in the team. She finally, after sort of saying she was going to retire, and I'd say no. She'd say, I want to retire. I'd say no. And so we went through about 6 years of that. And so finally, she got me convinced that she retired this year. We're very grateful for all that she's done. I look forward to the next 5 years of work, and then we'll take it from there. And I look forward to working with all of you and really thinking through, what do we want to do in the next 5 years? What do we want to achieve? And I look forward to getting input from our students, our research associates, postdoc, and our faculty fellows. And I hope our faculty fellows can help sit with me and really dream about where we're going to the future. Think through that. We have some wonderful posters at the back that Dan put together that highlight some of the work we do. There are bottles of wine open. So I don't think I want to be in the way of you getting a glass hanging out by the post. Thank you all for coming. Look forward to continuing to work.